Okay, let's dive right into this fascinating case digest of Antiporda versus Garchitorena. If you're looking to really understand the precise mechanics of how courts acquire and exercise their power, and exactly what happens when a brilliant legal loophole tries to stop them in their tracks, well, you're in exactly the right place today. Jurisdiction can be one of the trickiest areas of law, but it is the absolute bedrock of every single case. Without it, the entire legal machinery literally just grinds to a halt. So, welcome back to PHCodal channel, where we break down complex jurisprudence into clear visual takeaways. We know you value your time and you want to get straight to the heart of the law, cutting through all that dense legal jargon to find the insights that actually matter. We're completely committed to making sure these crucial legal principles are both accessible and memorable for you. Today, we'll be using our highly effective FIRR method to digest this explainer on Antiporda v. Garchitorena, which you can find in 321 SCRA 551. We're going to cover 1. Facts of the case, 2. The legal issues, 3. The court's ruling, and finally, 4. The court's reasoning.
Let's kick things off with Section 1, Facts of the Case.
Our timeline begins with a really serious allegation. Back on September 1, 1995, Elmer Ramos was allegedly kidnapped in Sanchez Mira, Cagayan. Now, this wasn't just some minor dispute. Kidnapping carries severe penalties and instantly elevates the stakes for everyone involved. Fast forward 2 years to September 1997, and an information, which is essentially a formal criminal charge, was officially filed at the Sandiganbayan. But the accused didn't just take this lying down. They mounted a defense strategy. By April 1998, they filed what's called a motion to quash, basically attempting to get the charges thrown out entirely before a trial could even start. When that motion was denied by the court, well, the stage was definitively set for the intense legal battle we're unpacking right now. Let's look a little closer at that original information filed at the First Division of the Sandiganbayan. It explicitly named 4 accused individuals: Licerio A. Antiporda Jr., Eleuterio Rubiaco, Victor Gaskin, and Cesar Tala. The formal charge detailed that they kidnapped Elmer Ramos against his will, utilizing a specific getaway vehicle, a maroon Tamaro FX. The prosecution meticulously laid out who was involved, who the victim was, and the specific tools they allegedly used to commit the crime. But here is where the defense thought they hit the jackpot. The original information completely failed to allege that Licerio Antiporda Jr. took advantage of his official position as the mayor of Buguay, Cagayan. Now, why on earth does that matter? Well, it's actually a massive detail. Because the Sandiganbayan is a specialized anti-graft court meant explicitly for public officers who use their office to commit crimes, the petitioners argued that without this specific allegation of using his mayoral powers, the court completely lacked the jurisdictional facts necessary to even hear the case. If the crime wasn't explicitly tied to his office, they reasoned it belonged in a regular regional trial court. They really thought they had a procedural checkmate that would end the prosecution right then and there. So the accused filed their motion to quash, fully expecting the case to be thrown out so they could walk free. But the Sandiganbayan took a completely different route. The court actually recognized the defect in the information. They totally agreed a vital piece of the puzzle was missing. However, rather than dismissing these heavy charges on a technicality, they simply ordered the prosecution to amend the information to include those missing jurisdictional facts. And this right here is where the tension truly peaks, setting up a major clash over judicial authority. Which naturally brings us to Section 2, the legal issues. This created a genuinely fascinating legal paradox that the Supreme Court had to resolve. Think about it deeply from the defense's perspective for a second. If a court doesn't have jurisdiction over the offense as it was originally written on the paper, does that court even possess the legal authority to order the paper to be fixed? The petitioners strongly argued that a court without jurisdiction is completely paralyzed. It cannot perform any legal act whatsoever, and that definitely includes ordering an amendment. To them, ordering an amendment was an exercise of power the court simply did not have. And as a quick corollary to that, we have to ask if this procedural shortcut violated the rights of the accused to a new preliminary investigation. Preliminary investigations are a crucial safeguard against hasty, malicious, or baseless prosecution. If you're changing the information to essentially charge a graver offense, one that now strictly falls under the Sandiganbayan's purview because it alleges the misuse of mayoral authority, shouldn't the accused get a chance to challenge those newly added allegations from square one? It's a very serious question about due process and basic fairness in the criminal justice system. So, how did it all shake out? Let's look at Section 3, the court's ruling. When the dust finally settled, the Supreme Court delivered a clear, definitive blow to the petitioners, dismissing their petition entirely. They fully upheld the Sandiganbayan's orders. According to the High Court, the amendment of the information to include those missing mayoral details was perfectly valid, and no new preliminary investigation was required. But obviously the big question remains. Why did the court rule this way?
Let's unpack the logic in Section 4, the court's reasoning. To really grasp their reasoning, we first have to ground ourselves in the strict legal definition of jurisdiction. Fundamentally, it's the power with which courts are invested for administering justice, meaning the actual authority to hear and decide cases. In order for a court to dispose of a case on the merits and issue a binding judgment, it absolutely must acquire this power properly. It is quite literally the lifeblood of the judicial process.
Citing the landmark case of Erla v. Espino, the court laid out 3 unbending rules, 3 requisites that must concur before a court can acquire jurisdiction to try a criminal case. First, you need jurisdiction over the offense itself. Second, you need jurisdiction over the territory where the crime happened. And third, you need jurisdiction over the person of the accused. If any single one of these 3 pillars is absent, the court cannot proceed to a full trial and issue a valid conviction or acquittal. And this right here brings us to the fatal contradiction in the petitioner's legal strategy. On one hand, they were adamantly claiming the Sandiganbayan had absolutely no jurisdiction over the case whatsoever, that it was just a completely powerless entity in this matter. But on the exact same hand, they filed a motion to quash, actively asking that very same Sandiganbayan to exercise its judicial power and make a legal ruling in their favor. Do you see the issue? They were trying to play both sides of the procedural fence. In fact, the Supreme Court actually used that classic, colorful phrase to point out the absurdity of their position, noting that the petitioners cannot have their cake and eat it too. You simply cannot claim a court is entirely powerless while simultaneously invoking its power to get your case dismissed. By willingly appearing before the court to file that motion, filing pleadings, and actively arguing their case, they were directly interacting with and validating the court's authority over them. So here's how the final pieces of the legal puzzle fit together. First, the Sandiganbayan undisputably had territorial jurisdiction over the incident that occurred in Cagayan. Second, by filing that motion to quash and having their legal counsel actively appear, the accused voluntarily submitted their persons to the court's jurisdiction. So look at that. The court already possessed 2 of the 3 mandatory requisites. Because the court had territorial jurisdiction and successfully acquired jurisdiction over the persons of the accused, it was not entirely powerless. It possessed sufficient legal authority to order the prosecution to correct the defect regarding the offense via an amendment, rather than being forced to just blindly dismiss the entire case. Essentially, the court was well within its rights to tell them to clean up the paperwork. If you found this explainer helpful in untangling this case, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the PHCodal channel so we can keep bringing you these deep dives. But before you go, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments on this final question. Does filing a motion always mean you automatically surrender to a court's power? Or do you think there should be exceptions for purely jurisdictional challenges? Think about it, sound off below, and we will see you in the next explainer.